Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
You never know what the cascading effects of one change will have.
It's a wonderful tool to show the public what the 19th century was about.
Hiking allowed me to find myself.
Today on Spotlight, we are celebrating spring, how you can find peace and purpose in parks, and how hiking heals. Plus, learn how to enter the world of art collecting at a new exhibit. And then an update on local flowers and bees, how the climate change is affecting them. But first, an award show honoring St. Louis's best theater performances. It's Sunday and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight. It's a crowd pleaser. Full of wit and whimsy. The action doesn't stop. Worth the wait. These are just a few of the words critics use when reviewing shows at the theater. And it's the critics who get together to choose St. Louis's coveted Theater Circle Awards. They've been around for 10 years.
The Theater Circle started just after the previous awards, the Kevin Kline Awards, went out of business, and we felt that we could fill in the gap.
Because of COVID, this year's ceremony is virtual for the second time, and the awards will cover 2020 and 2021.
There were 71 shows on our total list of shows to consider, and 22 of those were in 2020.
The companies with the most nominations this year are the well-known Rep and the beloved Muni.
A deer, a female deer, Ray, a tropical song.
With 27 nominations each.
Oh, the king is coming!
And we also have 4 other companies that have double figures of nominations. The St. Louis Shakespeare Festival, Stages St. Louis, the Black Rep, and the Midnight Company.
The 2 shows with the most nominations are Chicago at the Muni.
Come on, babe, why don't we paint the town? And all that jazz.
And Jersey Boys at Stages.
People really do love getting our awards. Some people call it the theater prom, because it's a great opportunity for the theater community to get together just for one fun activity.
This year, the 33 categories are getting a refresh of sorts because the awards want to include non-binary performers.
We're no longer giving out awards to actors and actresses. Instead, we're basing our categories on the gender of the role rather than the gender of the performers.
So you'll see titles like Outstanding Leading Performer in a Comedy, Female or Non-Binary Role.
We want to be inclusive.
To be considered, a cast has to be professional, meaning they were compensated for their work.
We don't cover touring shows that did not originate in St. Louis, and we don't cover shows from companies that self-identify as community theaters or college theaters.
HEC Media is once again partnering with the Theater Circle Awards and producing the virtual show.
The 9th Theater Circle Awards will be streamed on March 28th at 7 p.m. on HEC Media's website, Facebook page, and YouTube channel.
So get ready for a wildly entertaining, charming show full of sheer joy as the best of the best in St. Louis theater get awarded for their first-class performances.
Celebrate the best in locally produced professional theater. Stream the 2022 St. Louis Theater Circle Awards ceremony on Monday, March 28th at 7 p.m. exclusively on hecmedia.org, HEC Media's Facebook page, and HEC Media's YouTube channel.
This story is brought to you in partnership with STL Made.
I went on my first hike in August of 2019. At the time, I was going through a lot personally, working a lot of day-to-day stresses, and hiking was something that was always in the back of my mind that I wanted to start, but I didn't really know how to get started. So my friend Matt, he's an avid outdoorsman, and I had mentioned to him I wanted to go hiking, so he invited me out with him and his wife, and a couple days later, we went hiking at Castlewood State Park. It was a short trail, it was about 1.7 miles, but it was so beautiful, so therapeutic, and it was exactly what I needed at the time. That kind of started my hiking journey, and then it was like from there on, I went hiking every Sunday for the next 40 weeks, and started Black People Hike a couple weeks after that. When I was hiking, I noticed a couple things. I noticed one, I didn't see anybody else on the trail that looked like me, and then two, I was so in love with hiking, and I was trying to share it with people that I knew that also looked like me, and people would kind of just, they wouldn't respond to my text messages, they leave me on red. So I realized, hey, this is a need for something in the community. This is something that people of color need to be able to experience, and I just wanted to introduce more people to it. Historically, Black people have been excluded from the outdoors. It's definitely a huge barrier that we've faced, and that something at my organization is trying to tackle. Even if you think about the national parks, people of color weren't allowed equally into the park system until desegregation with the 1950s, and then even then, was it a safe place to go? So typically, and again, this doesn't apply to all people of color, but Black people are typically have this fear around spending time outside. A lot of the parks that we visit, majority of the parks that we visit are in rural areas where it may be unsafe to travel or to be out there alone. People continue to come out because they feel welcome, they feel safe. We've even had people that have came out that they hike regularly. They might just go to a Castlewood or something, but we went to Down in Robinson a few weeks back, and it's about an hour and a half outside of the city, and they're like, this is beautiful, but I would have never traveled out here alone. I think in terms of the benefits around hiking, there's obviously the physical, you're hiking, you're exerting energy, you're exercising. The mental, though, is super important, as well as the spiritual. So I know even myself, when I was hiking weekly, it was as if each week I'd come out on the trail and I would come back and I'd find out something different about myself, or I would connect a little bit further with my inner self or with God or with the universe. It's just to be out here and to literally be out here in silence, and all you can hear is, yourself and nature. It definitely creates a space, a very intimate space with, again, whatever people want to call it, whether that's God or the universe, or, the higher being. When I first started hiking, it was like, hey, I'm a Black person that hikes. This is, there wasn't many people that I knew. So it was like, hey, we hike too. And it just really evolved into just a movement. What we want to do is, be able to create generational health. So if you think about, for instance, somebody's parents, like my parents they were born in the 50s. So if you think about another Black person, their parents being born in the 50s, were they hiking? Were they having access to these type of spaces growing up? Probably not. Did they then pick up that activity and introduce it to their kids? Maybe, maybe not. But it's kind of like this is a generation where we're able to really start that access to generational health and teach our kids and teach our friends and teach our family and to everyone to join this movement, and we hike too and we're out here. Hiking allowed me to find myself and unapologetically be myself and walk in my shoes and walk in my purpose. And I know that what I'm doing is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at.
Visit thestl.com for more stories like this one.
HEC Media. Recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. HEC Media has been bringing home the hardware for over a decade. Arts and education to author talks, magazine shows and documentaries, individual craft achievements to overall excellence. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
We're here at projects+gallery in the Central West End. We are in an exhibition that recently opened titled Mostly. It includes national, international, and local artists, but we've really curated this exhibition to make the idea of collecting art more accessible. So a lot of these works are under the price point of $5,000. A lot of the works are prints or photographs, and a lot of these artists are kind of upcoming rising stars in the art world. Here at projects+gallery, we really believe that living with artwork really enriches your life, and we want to make that more accessible for people. And I think there's this perceived barrier, oftentimes even walking in the door of a gallery or the price point. So we wanted to show that there's a lot of different price points, even starting at a few $100s, and kind of be able to open a dialogue and talk to people about what the process is of collecting, how you can work with a gallery and a dealer to make that happen for you and bring art into your home. We really wanted to put this exhibition together to not only bring existing collectors into the gallery, but also really encourage younger collectors or new collectors who maybe find coming into an art gallery space or even starting the conversation about purchasing artwork a little intimidating. We curated work not only from our existing inventory, but then invited several local artists to also participate in this exhibition. The show also really shows you kind of the breadth and depth of work that we have in our inventory. You'll see works on paper, paintings, photographs, sculpture. It really runs the gamut of different mediums in this exhibition. We hope that you come down to the Central West End and visit us at projects+gallery. The current exhibition mostly runs through April 2nd, and for more information you can go to our website at www.projects-gallery.com.
Mozart in the Botanical Garden, later on Spotlight.
I have noticed markedly earlier flowering.
Matthew Austin is on a mission at Shaw Nature Reserve. It started in the spring of 2021. He's a postdoctoral fellow with the Living Earth Collaborative at Washington University in St. Louis.
Looking at the ecological and evolutionary implications on pollination systems as a result of a changing climate. So we know that climate change has altered the time of year that plants flower. In the greater St. Louis area, we see that a warming climate is not only causing flowers to bloom earlier, but in many species it's also causing flowering to end later.
After a long winter, early, cheerful blooms are welcomed by many, but the implications are not as cheerful because of concerns.
Affect how likely we are to see the flowers that we enjoy in our native environment.
Austin says this changing flowering season may confuse bees and other pollinators. Suddenly, there are a lot more flowering options at one time. This might give pollinators more opportunity to transfer pollen between different species. And what does that mean then for the future of various flowers?
Most of the species here at Shaw are flowering at a different time now than they used to about 80 years ago.
Austin's role is to examine the survival of flowers native to Missouri. He reviewed historical records of flowering times collected along the path dating back to the late 1930s to early 40s, and he's conducting his own pollination study. With climate change and many different flowers in bloom at the same time, chances for cross-pollination by confused busy bees and other pollinators is more likely. So Austin manipulated various conditions for flowers to see what happens.
To conduct my hand pollination experiments, I'm doing the work that a bee would do. However, to be very careful and controlled in my experimentation, I have to make sure that other bees or other pollinators aren't also pollinating the flowers that I'm working with. The question that my hand pollination experiments are testing is whether if a flower receives pollen from a different species, it will be a reproductive dead end. Will that flower not reproduce at all compared to if that same type of flower received pollen from a different flower of its own species?
Austin wants to know whether flowers that receive pollen from a different species will produce fewer seeds than flowers that receive pollen from their own species. Through close examination, Austin discovered that this flower, called bloodroot, has been affected. The bloodroot flowers produce fewer seeds when they receive pollen from this flower, called spring beauty. And he says preliminary evidence suggests that their flowering seasons overlap more now than they did a century ago. Both are now blooming at the same time in the spring. So this year, Austin's research will try to determine if bloodroot received pollen from different species at higher rates during the extended flowering season from climate change throughout the 20th century. And the research sheds light on how there's more than the beauty and survival of flowers to consider.
The time of year that bees are out, they could be left without the flowers that they normally feed from. While research is ongoing on bee populations, if bees are not able to feed from flowers that they have historically in the past, if they're not able to shift to feeding on a different species, you could see declines of their populations. We're similarly concerned about declines of other pollinators, such as butterflies, flies, moths. It's hard to predict because ecosystems are incredibly complex and interconnected communities. And you never know what the cascading effects of one change will have on other organisms.
Since 1894, Victoria water lilies have been on display at the Missouri Botanical Garden. Originally, gardener James Gurney grew the lilies in London and were a favorite of young Queen Victoria, whose name has been attached to them ever since. He eventually found a job under Henry Shaw in St. Louis and brought the lilies with him. The plants crave the heat and humidity of the tropics, which make August prime viewing time. The pool water they're grown in is dyed black to provide reflection and showcase the beauty of the flower.
I arrived at the garden in 2010 to take up the new position for me as president. I was taken round on a golf buggy, and as I looked over my shoulder, I said, "What's that building?" And the answer was, "Oh, that's closed. It's not used." I said, "Yes, but what is it?" "Oh, that's Shaw's Museum." "Oh, can I go in?" "Well, I don't have the key." So I persisted, and I was amazed to go in and find that it was a hidden architectural treasure.
It is St. Louis's forgotten museum.
It's been a real black hole. You see it on the corner of your eye as you go by.
It opened in 1860 as a tabernacle to the wonders of nature, built by a man who was a force of nature. Henry Shaw founded the Missouri Botanical Garden, one of the first of its kind in the country and one of the best of its kind in the world. Though Shaw insisted it always be called the Missouri Botanical Garden, generations of St. Louisans have refused to call it anything other than Shaw's Garden. And the first permanent building built for the garden was Shaw's Museum. But its mission turned out to be temporary, because from the day it opened, it was too small for the garden's growing ambitions.
If this building was being advertised by a real estate agent, he or she would probably say it was definitely a fixer-upper.
Now, after more than a century of drift and decline, Henry Shaw's museum has become a museum once again, brought back to life with help from donors, big and small.
The original, I love it. Beautiful. But we're gonna do better.
I think it's fabulous. Today, when we have civic buildings and churches and strip malls, and we tear down monumental buildings and put in parking lots, it's a wonderful tool to be able to show the public what the 19th century was about.
Henry Shaw built his museum for $25,000. Restoring it would cost almost $8 million and take more than a year to complete.
Well, it is challenging, partly because a lot of it you don't really know what you're getting into until the contractor's on site and peeling stuff away.
Well, I'd like to think we know everything else, but on the other hand, when we find something like this, it's inevitable that there's other things we're going to learn along the way.
The building obviously has had lots of challenges over the years, and so perhaps they had no alternative but to cover it up, keep it safe, and wait for us to come along and conserve it in the future.
It took 4 seasons to reimagine Henry Shaw's museum, which is now officially named in memory of Stephen and Peter Sachs, whose family provided the lead donation for the project. But if history tells us anything, it would seem to suggest that St. Louisans will probably just call this place Shaw's Museum.
The real significance of the building is its historical legacy, that it ties to the Henry Shaw vision and was his first stab at creating a facility that would be a leader in botanical science.
To watch the full documentary, visit hecmedia.org. In partnership with the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra, here's Songs of America. Visit slso.org to see more from the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. Next week, a St. Louis startup researches a way for the body to defend itself against cancer. Plus, 10 important moments in Emily Dickinson's life that shaped her and her work. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.